there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be doing some ink blowing. Now I've been wanting to try this on a card for a really long time, so today is the day. Now for today I am choosing to use some Reinkers, but I think that it would be fun if you could do this with some watercolor paints. I think would be fun. Anything that kind of has a liquidy consistency. You could try using some scribble sticks or something like that and when you add a little bit of water to those, or gelatos, and adding some water to those to make a watery pigmented liquid. I mean, there are lots of different options that you can try, but just I had Reinkers here and I felt like that was a nice, quick, easy option for me. You could also try just smushing your ink pad down onto an acrylic block and adding a little bit of water to that. I felt like I would just get a stronger, darker color using the Reinkers, but give anything a go by all means. You could even water down some acrylic paint maybe, and that would work really well. Now I'm going to create my background first, and for that I'm going to use the colour Pinecone from the VersaFine Clair range. Now the reason that I'm using this instead of like my Distress Oxide vintage photo kind of colour is because I want this permanent. I don't want it to shift because I will be adding liquid and water on top. So the one way I can do that is to use a permanent ink, and there are many of those out there. So I've just done a really light wash, a little light blend over the entire card front here. As I said, this is just creating a little bit of a background. Then I have a wood grain kind of stamp here, and I'm just going to ink it up in the same ink that I used. And just because I don't want it to be dark, it's a background, it's not going to be in the foreground, I'm going to use a spare piece of paper, a piece of copy paper, and just take one pressing of it off first, and then add my card down so I get that really kind of light, nice wood grain effect. And then just for fun, I'm going to add a little bit more kind of texture to the card, and I'm going to do that using a text stamp. Now this is a super old one, and I've shown this in a few videos. I think someone told me in the last video that it may still be available, but I'm doing the same technique where I am blotting off most of the ink and then just putting some little spots here and there and pressing my card front down onto the stamp because I'm not able to maneuver the wood block stamp the way I want to, so I'm just pressing the card panel to the stamp, and I just get a little bit of that texture in amongst the wood grain. So now I am going to start moving on to the ink blowing part of this. I have a little pipette, and this is just my water sprayer. I'm popping some little dots down here on an acrylic block, and then I will pop a little bit of each of the Reinkers down into this water. Now I guess I probably could have just used straight Reinkers, but I felt like that might almost be a little bit too strong and I didn't want to use that much Reinker. It turns out that I had heaps and heaps of liquid here, and it doesn't take much at all. It's just a drop or two that you are really adding down onto your card, depending on your design of course. Now using my masking paper, I am going to cut out this really simple heart shape, and again you could do stars, hearts, rectangles, and you could put a really nice big sentiment down in the middle of a big rectangle. I see so many design options. Or you could do several different shapes all over the front of your page, several smaller shapes. So there are lots and lots of options, but for this one I'm going to have my heart hanging just slightly off over the edge. And then I just have any normal straw. This is a paper straw, and you are going to see my face because my straw is just a normal length one. So I apologize about my head popping in and out of all the views. I used a little pipette just to get a little bit of that reddish ink color, and then I will blow it simply with the straw. It's really very easy. Then if I think I need a little bit more of that colour, I will just keep adding in more, or if I think I've got enough, I move on to the next colour and then put the ink down and blow it with the straw quickly before it kind of dries and seeps into the paper. Now because I am adding so much liquid and so much water here, I don't expect at all to get a clean mask. Sometimes you will and sometimes you won't, but I feel like it adds to the image because I kind of went for the vintagey look with the background being browns and text and wood grain, that I feel like not having that clean crisp image will work really well with this card. So I'm moving around. I pretty much went into a rainbow of colours, and I just got out my little ink swatches to see which colours I would like to use. However, I realized that I have ink pads and I don't have Reinkers for them. I knew that, but I have quite a few, so I just had to kind of work with what Reinkers I had. So whatever you have on hand, as I said, it doesn't have to be rainbow. You could just follow a simple color scheme or go ombre from top to bottom. There are so many different options with the ink blowing. If you end up having a go at doing the ink blowing, we would love to see it over on our Facebook page. I really love that there is a very supportive community where we're able to share your projects that are inspired by some of these videos. So I will leave a link to that down below in the description box, as well as the links to any supplies that are still current and I can find the links to. That will be down there as well. Now I am choosing to dry this with my heat gun just because I wanted to keep moving on with the next step, and there is quite a bit of liquid and ink on the front of my panel. So now I'm going to remove my mask, and I'm really happy with how that came out. I'm going to finish this off by popping it in a stamping tool. Now originally I thought I was going to stamp this really light, so I thought I'd have to stamp it a few times, and that's why I put it in my mini Misty, but I ended up changing my mind. I have this thank you for everything you do stamp, and I am going to cut it apart because it just didn't center quite right on my heart. I want it kind of centered over to the right, and so I will put the thank you, which reaches right across the middle, and then the for everything you do, or for everything, sorry, will go down the bottom. So it just worked out better if I could cut them apart. And when I do cut my stamps apart, I don't cut off any of that excess little photopolymer or anything, because that helps me if I want to put the stamps back together again. It helps me be able to line them up perfectly. Now, just as I was about to stamp this down, I felt like the inside of the heart, I wanted to make it sparkly versus the outside of the heart, because it's very plain there in the middle. And I like that big open space, but I'm using this happens to be the scrapbook.com glitter pen, the Clair glitter pen, and I'm making sure that I put plenty on. However, I want to make sure I don't touch any of those inks because they are water reactive and they would end up smudging into the inside of my heart. So I am being very careful when I go around the outside, but I put a really good layer of shine on, and then you can see here, it's still wet at the moment, so I'll show you in a minute when it's dry, but it does add a lot to the center of the heart considering how kind of simple that inner part is. Now I do want to make sure I dry this because obviously it's a wet medium and I don't want to stamp on top of something that is wet, so I'm just using my heat tool to make sure it is really nice and dry, making sure that I don't get any bleeding of the ink if I stamp it onto the wet. Especially this far into the project, that would be really frustrating. So in a second I'll show you it when it's all nice and dry, and the sparkle, the shine is kind of more obvious and definitely more sparkly when it's nice and dry. So I did add a nice couple of layers. You saw I kept going over it to get a really good sparkle and shine, but then I am going to stamp it down. Now when I stamped the thank you sentiment, I stamp it in the same Pinecone pigment ink, just because that was the colour that I had already used on the background, and I also went around the edges of my card front as well. You can see that they have a little bit of brown on them too, just to bring everything together. Then I'm going to pop this onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card front. You saw me cut down my card panel at the beginning of the video, and I'm going to centre this one to the right as well, just for something a tiny little bit different. So that is a really, really simple card and heaps of fun. I had lots of fun ink blowing today, so I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you so much for all of your support. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to my channel. I post cards every second day, so every other day. So plenty of new material to feast your eyes on. See you in the next video. Thanks, bye!